Good evening and welcome to my YouTube channel. And in this case, I want to respond to a question to you, Zara. And the question you asked me is find the maximum and minimum of the function y is equals to minus 5 sine x plus 7. You will have to understand that the key point to look at in this question is simply the sine x, because that is what is changing. Minus 5 is a constant, plus 7 is a constant. And for us to evaluate the sine x and its maximum and minimum, you will have to go back to the graph of the sine wave, whereby if we can just construct a simple graph of sine, the maximum of sine is 1, and the minimum of any sine, regardless of the size of the angle, is -1. Assuming we have 0 here, we have 90 there, we have 180 there, we have 270, and we have 360 degrees. The sine of 0 is 0, the sine of 90 is 1, the sine of 180 is 0, the sine of 270 is -1, and the sine of 360 is 0. So we have a graph that looks like this, and this is the graph of y is equals to the sine of x. So whatever the value of x, the maximum of any sine of any angle will be 1, and the minimum of any sine of any angle will be -1. So going back to our equation, whereby y is equals to minus 5, assuming the sine of the highest sine is 1, so as it is indicated there, if we put there 1 plus 7, this is just minus 5 plus 7, which is positive 2. And assuming now the minimum of sine x is -1, y becomes minus 5 times -1 plus 7, which is simply 5 plus 7, because minus 5 times -1 is positive 5, plus 7, which is basically 12. And it goes without saying that this is the minimum and this is the maximum value. And that is it. The second question is the tangent of x is -3 and x is obtuse angle. The tangent of x is -3, and now that x is an obtuse angle, so find what we are calling the cosine of x. I would want you to understand one thing, that if you use your calculator to find the trigonometric ratios, you will always find an angle which is acute, and this is what you did in your first place. And of course, if we can talk about the tangent of any angle x is opposite over adjacent, we have to have the opposite. Assuming we have x there, the opposite is 3 and the adjacent is 1. Let us first of all take 3 so that we can get the hypotenuse. And the hypotenuse is 1 squared plus 3 squared. Even if it was -3 squared is still 9, and this is 10. And therefore, according to Pythagoras, then this is simply root of 10. So we have the root of 10 there. Now, we have to understand that you have to know that in the 4 quadrants, in this first quadrant, which is quadrant 1, the angles you find are acute. Acute angles are always found in that particular quadrant. This is the positive direction, and this is the negative direction. And this is where you find obtuse angles, angles which are greater than 90 and less than 180 degrees. And therefore, the fact that the tangent of angle x is -3, we would wish to first of all ignore -3 because the negative indicates the quadrant in which the angle exists or dwells. And for this reason, the tangent of x, to start with, I'm going to take it to be +3. And I will pick my calculator and say 3 equals to shift turn of answer, and I will find that the angle I'm talking about, which is now acute, is 71.6 degrees. This is now 71.6 degrees. We will always make the angle that is between the line of angle and the horizontal x-axis. The same kind of angle is reflected in the second quadrant, which is 71.6 degrees. There we go. Now, it goes without saying that if you look at the quadrants generally, here we talk about all, S, T, C. What does this mean? I usually say all science teachers complain, or cast, or add sugar to coffee, depending on what you like. But A means that all trigonometric ratios in the first quadrant, they are positive. All trigonometric ratios. And what are they? The sine, the cosine, and the tangent, they are all positive in the first quadrant. In the second quadrant, only sine is positive. In the third quadrant, only tangent is positive. In the fourth quadrant, only cosine is positive. And therefore, I would want to say that there are rules of the game. Here, we will always get the acute angle. But for us to get the same angle in the second quadrant, the rule is 180 minus x, which is now this x. And for you to get the angle in the third quadrant, it is always 180 plus x. And for you to get the angle in the fourth quadrant, it is always 360 minus x, because you'll form angles which are between the horizontal x-axis and the line of angle. So what does that mean? If the tangent of 3, if the tangent of 71.6 degrees is 3, then this angle is 71.6. And the same angle is reflected here. But of course, we know that for us to get the angle whose tangent is actually -3, it is not 71, but it is 180 minus x, our x, which is now 71 degrees. And it goes without saying that x is equals to 180 minus 71.6 degrees. So 180 minus 71.6 degrees, which is 108.4 degrees. But how do we get now the cosine? How do we get the cosine of x? Surprisingly, we can talk about the cosine of answer, and we'll get -0.315. But I would want us to still use 71.6, because it is always about the angle between the horizontal x-axis and the line of angle. So we know that the cosine of x is equals to the cosine of 108.4 degrees, which is exactly equals to the cosine of 71.4 degrees. But now remember that this one is in the second quadrant, and in the second quadrant only the sign is positive, so this one has to be negative whatsoever. So we say, what is the cosine of 71.4 degrees? It is 0.318, which has to be now the cosine of this, the cosine of 1 108.4 degrees is negative 0.319. That is it. And incidentally, even if you are to say the cosine of 108.4 degrees is equals to the cosine of 70, this is 71.6, not 4.6, correction there. The cosine of 71.6, which is 0.316, let's say 316, and because it is in the second quadrant where only sign is positive, then cosine there has to be negative, and therefore it is now understood that you can go along and find the cosine of 71.6 degrees, but of course you realize it is in the second quadrant where cosine is negative. Or once you find the value of x, then you can go directly and find the cosine of 108.4 degrees, which is still the same. All right, I hope that is clear. If you have any question, please come back to me. Thank you.